My name is Emma Krejci. I'm with the Worker Justice Center of New York. I'm really happy to be here with all of you tonight. I'm very happy to be representing the Fund Excluded Workers Coalition, which I know many of you are a part of as well. The FEW Coalition, as we call it, was created here in New York State in response to the pandemic and all of the subsequent mass unemployment that came with it. We came together during a crisis because of the tremendous hardships faced by workers who were ineligible for traditional unemployment insurance. And in April of 2021, our statewide coalition, thanks to many of the people in this room, along with our partners across the state, we won a $2.1 billion excluded workers fund. This was the largest cash relief program for undocumented and informal sector workers in the history of this country. It was really monumental. And through the Excluded Workers Fund, 130,000 New Yorkers received relief payments, with the overwhelming majority receiving the maximum relief award amount of $15,600. So this was really meaningful support for the people who were able to qualify for that one-time assistance. But of course, it was just a one-time program. What we are doing now with the Fund Excluded Workers Coalition is we are advocating for a permanent unemployment program for New Yorkers who are excluded from UI. This is a program we're calling the Unemployment Bridge Program, or UBP for short. So again, many of the people in this room, the people that you will hear from tonight, are members of our local community who, if we are successful, would gain protection under this new program. So just briefly to introduce the whole topic, I want to give you a little snapshot of what actually is the Unemployment Bridge Program. What have we proposed? We introduced this legislation earlier in the year. It's sponsored by Senator Jessica Ramos and by Assemblymember Cardenas Reyes in the Assembly. This is a bill that extends unemployment protections. It's not UI, it's a parallel, separate program, but it extends unemployment protections to 4 groups of workers who are currently excluded from regular unemployment insurance. Specifically, workers that are earning below the state's median income of $56,000 a year. So it's really designed to ensure that there is a safety net for the people who are lower earning on the lower earning end of the spectrum, and to ensure that they have some kind of economic stability during periods of unemployment. So who are these 4 groups? First, we have immigrants who are without work authorization. So these are the folks that were really the primary target group for the Excluded Workers Fund. And we saw the overwhelming need in the immigrant community in particular during the pandemic. Undocumented immigrants contribute about $1.4 billion in UI taxes in New York State. They have contributed, this is over the past 10 years, but even during the pandemic could not collect a dime of that in UI benefits. The other thing we saw through the Excluded Workers Fund was that in addition to undocumented folks, there were many, many people that were functionally excluded from UI. And many of those people, folks like that were doing cash earners and more informal economy workers, they actually sought relief through the EWF because even though they technically may have qualified for UI, they couldn't actually get it. And so that highlighted for us, this keeps going off. That highlighted for us the gaps, more of the gaps in our unemployment and social safety net, especially for these cash earners in the informal economy. And that included domestic workers and day laborers, people working in landscaping and in construction, including people with work authorization. So that's the second group that will be included under the Unemployment Bridge Program. I don't know if it's just losing charge or what, but I'll keep turning that on. Or should I switch? Just switch. Okay. All right. Here we go. So domestic workers, just to give one example, there are tens of thousands of domestic workers in New York State. Our Department of Labor believes that only about 10% of those domestic workers are employed. We're talking about people employed by individual families. Only about 10% of those people are paid on the books by their employers. And of course, families frequently end employment relationships with domestic workers when their needs shift, but then it's nearly impossible for them to collect unemployment benefits if they're not paid on the books. So this is the second category of workers that we're talking about. The third category of workers that would be protected under UBP are freelancers and self-employed workers, some of which we'll hear from tonight. This is a group that actually received protection through the federal pandemic unemployment assistance program. So through PUA, these folks, there was a recognition that these folks actually needed to be included in our unemployment social safety net. However, that program ended in September of 2021. So when we introduced our UBP legislation earlier this year, we realized how important it was to include this vulnerable group, especially given the growth of the freelance workforce. And then the fourth group, last but not least, of course, are people who are in reentry after being released from incarceration or immigration detention. Incarcerated workers produce $2 billion in goods and perform $9 billion in maintenance services, while often being paid between 12 and 52 cents an hour, if anything at all, right? So these are people that are working, but their labor does not count toward the accrual of UI benefits. And then, of course, well, you'll hear more, I won't go on, but there are many reasons why it's a good idea to support people who are in reentry. In total, there are an estimated 750,000 workers in the New York State labor force that would be covered by this program. Here in the Mid-Hudson region, we estimate that about 30,000 workers would be covered by the program, with some 1,200 people actually receiving benefits in a typical year. That amounts to $18 million in economic stimulus to the region. There are some handouts in the back, and I will just note that there's a lot more information about the different groups that would benefit, how many workers we estimate with what the uptake would be each year, the regional breakdown across the state. So I invite you to take a look at the Immigration Research Initiative handout that gets into some of those details. So how a UBP would work, the eligibility requirements are very similar to state unemployment benefits. You must have worked at least 3 of the last 12 calendar months before the month of unemployment and earned a minimum of $4,050. This requirement, of course, would be waived for people recently released from incarceration or detained for more than a year, because they're earning so little, it would be impossible to prove work in that context and meet the earnings threshold. The documentation requirements would be very similar to the Excluded Workers Fund in terms of proving work history, identity, and residency in New York State. And then the benefit amount would be either $800 or $1,200 payments monthly for up to 6 months. So it is a limited time period. In terms of costs, we estimate that the program would cost around $500 million. That includes the benefits that would be provided, as well as the administrative costs. Some people have asked the question, this very present issue in our news cycle about the new arrivals that have come to our communities. And so some are wondering whether the influx of asylum seekers to New York will impact the cost of the program. And we really believe that it will not appreciably impact the program or the estimated costs. The reason for this is twofold. One is that this is an earned benefit. Just like with UI, you have to work in order to qualify. So if you've just arrived to the country, you will not have either the residency requirements or the work history to qualify for the program. We, of course, do need to set up supports for new arrivals to support their integration in our communities, but this is not what this program is intended for. Secondly, many of these folks are going to receive work authorization, whether it's through their asylum applications or through TPS. In the case of many Venezuelans, once they gain work authorization, they will they will be eligible to be covered under regular unemployment insurance. So we really, while they're not excluded from this program, we don't anticipate that this is a program that will primarily serve asylum seekers or new arrivals. Also, this funding for the program is an annual capped appropriation, which means that benefits would be available until funds run out. So we wouldn't be looking at a budget issue year to year. The bill also, and this is really, I know, of great interest to many of you, it includes something called a digital ad tax, which we expect to raise up to $750 million for New York, making the program essentially revenue neutral and ultimately sustainable. And I won't get too far into this. Again, there's a handout in the back if you want to learn more about the digital ad tax, but essentially this is something we're including in our bill because it aims to essentially expand and modernize our tax base by taking from the massive profits generated through corporate extraction of our personal data. You know, those little ads that pop up trying to sell me these new shoes and this cute new sweater, or they heard me say I wanted to sign my kid up for karate, so now I've got ads for, you know, that kind of stuff. So all of it would require the top advertising platforms like Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc., to pay a tiny portion of their state digital advertising revenue annually. So the tax base is essentially where the ads are viewed. So it's not like corporations can go to another state because they still want to advertise to New Yorkers. So basically we want big tech to foot the bill to ensure that we have basic unemployment protections for New Yorkers who are most vulnerable. We have speakers with us here tonight that are going to share their perspectives on why we need to pass the Unemployment Bridge program. Personally, as a worker rights advocate, I view unemployment assistance as a basic and essential labor right that safeguards workers against economic hardship and also serves as a bulwark against workplace abuse and exploitation. The reason is that unemployment benefits, of course, put money in the pockets of workers when they lose their jobs, and of course in a recession, it provides much needed stimulus to the local economy. And when workers lose their job and have nothing to fall back on, it increases the chances that they will feel pressed to take any job they can get, right? No matter the conditions, no matter the wages, no matter the health and safety hazards. And when workers go on strike, they're entitled to collect unemployment benefits. And so if that doesn't apply to everyone in the workplace, we also see that workers' collective power is diminished and their ability to fight for better working conditions is weakened. So as a worker rights advocate, I feel very strongly about the importance of this program, not just as a basic right to live in dignity, right? But also as a real worker protection. So I think I've spoken enough. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, excuse me, which is our assembly member here, Sarah Hama-Shrestha, is going to come up and share a few words.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Hama-Shrestha. I represent Woodstock, which is part of the 103rd Assembly District in New York State. And I am one of the 40 co-sponsors of this bill in the New York Assembly. And in the Senate, we have about 20 co-sponsors. So unfortunately, I'm here to talk a little bit about why this bill hasn't passed yet. And as a first-term legislator, I've learned a lot about how Albany works. And it is simultaneously frustrating and exciting. That's what I would say is the summary of my experience. So at a broad level, the way legislators or, you know, the culture of our government sets priorities is very flawed. That's at the broad level. especially when we're talking about the most disadvantaged workers who are most vulnerable. Essentially, they are seen as dispensable, right, replaceable, not a high priority. And then we get into the issue of, you know, what legislators see their role as. And I think a lot of legislators traditionally focus a lot on what the conditions are, which you should focus on. You should continually assess what the conditions are. But I think we often forget our role in helping to change those conditions, because we are, you know, we are not passive participants of our government. We are active participants. So when we assess the conditions, we also need to have a plan for how to change it so that we can win what people need. And, you know, I ran for office because I was organizing on climate legislation, and we often talk about the benefits of having organizers in office. And I have really truly seen the benefit of that, because you cannot just be a legislator, you also have to organize with the people outside, and especially bring that collaboration on the inside. That is really the powerful partnership that you can have as an organizer in office. So that's at the broad level. Now, at the more narrow specific level, we did speak up for this provision in our budget fight. We asked for $500 million. I personally was a sponsor of a corporate tax bill that is very lucrative for the state. I've been told that businesses actually don't mind paying corporate tax. The stakeholders just don't want the government to come after their personal income tax. But generally speaking, the business tax is a lucrative space. So I introduced a bill with Assemblymember Anna Kellis to make our corporate tax stronger in the state. It would have generated a lot of revenues. We also had bills generally to tax the ultra-rich. In New York, we have a concentration of few people who are very rich. For example, Michael Bloomberg, who fought against our initiatives. And generally speaking, $500 million is not a lot when you compare it to how much money there is in New York that we could be collecting through tax revenues that target, you know, the people who have a lot of money. And also, if we compare it to our overall state budget, it's actually not a whole lot of money. But what happened was the governor shut down on any new revenues through taxing the ultra-rich. She was a hard no on it, which affected being able to pass bills like this, and it also affected being able to properly fund our Medicaid, which funds our home care workers, who are, again, a lot of, you know, vulnerable immigrant workers, and so on. So that was the dynamic under which we were operating. And what we have been told is that unemployment insurance in general is sort of faltering in New York State, and it needs some kind of federal rescue. And some people have made the case that they would like to revisit unemployment insurance as a whole before talking about the unemployment bridge program, which of course to us sounds like we don't have time for the federal government to get its act together before we start protecting the very the very people who are keeping the state running. These are the people who are excluded from programs like this are the ones who happen to be doing the essential work, but who are also very invisible to people in power. So that's sort of the disheartening piece. But the exciting piece is, we won $2 billion in the 2022 budget because people organized. One of my colleagues went on hunger strike to win Excluded Workers Fund, one of the assembly members. So there's also power in organizing. It's really heartening to see, people in Woodstock come out to have interest in a bill like this, because I actually believe that the things that protect workers are very popular, amongst the ordinary folks, right? The ordinary folks support things like single parent healthcare, things like, universal childcare, things like unemployment program for those who are excluded. But it is very difficult to get that across the political hurdles that are purely political. So it's also empowering for me to be in office and report back from events like this and to say, this is what my district wants. This is what folks who live in my district want to fight for, and they support that I co-sponsored this bill. They want to see folks covered. And so that is the long battle that we are involved in. But again, like the $2 billion that we won shows that wins are not as rare as sometimes it feels like, and it's always nice to reflect on how we have won as recently as 2022 big things like $2 billion for the Excluded Workers Fund. So that's all I have to report back. Unfortunately, I cannot stay for the Q&A. So what we've done is we put out our office palm cards on the table, because anybody who wants to help push for this bill or who wants to have follow-up conversations with our office, do feel free to email us. We do read every email, so we will get back to you. Thank you so much.
So, all your support on this bill and championing workers across the board here in the district. I don't know where my run of show just went. I think we've had a slight change of plans, right?
Juanita.
We're starting with Juanita.
Hi.
Who I'm going to have come on up here to share her perspective on the unemployment bridge program. Thank you. Okay, and Juanita, you are with Ulster County Jail, is that right?
Ulster County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Okay, so sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Juanita Hotchkiss. I'm with the Ulster County Sheriff's Office. I'm here on behalf of Sheriff Juan Figueroa. My position with the Sheriff's Office, I'm the Director of Community and Incarcerated Services. So I am overseeing a lot of the forward-facing community services that perhaps some of you might be aware of, such as the Oracle team. So it's not only overseeing the team, but also the implementation of evidence-based practice, community-driven, community-led work. And this is very important to the sheriff. And so he felt that making a position that was very specifically going to keep the eye on these services was extremely important. So the Oracle team, I oversee AVERT, which is an anti-violence program. If you're not familiar with Oracle, it is the opioid response law enforcement program. And it initially started off as a law enforcement initiative with CIT trained officers, and with the help of the community and the Bureau of Justice, we were able to expand the program to also include a social worker and 2 peers that not only work with the officers in overdose response, but also provide follow-up and follow-through. In 2022, we expanded our grants and our grant application, and we applied for additional funding to the Bureau of Justice to provide additional outreach. We were getting a lot more community referrals than we had initially thought. We weren't really thinking that the community would be outreaching to law enforcement for, assistance in the full spectrum of assistance. And I'm just going to say from harm reduction all the way to treatment to recovery and beyond. And we started getting a lot of calls. So we did expand our services to not only include a community care manager to provide that kind of follow-up for our community referrals, and also a reentry coordinator. We really learned through a lot of looking at our community landscape analysis that this was a key and critical piece of the puzzle that was missing in Ulster County. We have not had a reentry coordinator in the past, I would say at least the past 10 years. We have reentry coordinators in the community that provide community support, but the Ulster County Sheriff's Office has not specifically had anyone working in this capacity for a very long time. So this was a very important piece. And so when we first heard about this legislation, when we heard about this group, when we heard about all of you, and this bridge program, it is the next step. This is what we need. So we have a reentry coordinator, but we have a gaping hole outside of our system, which is unemployment. It is unemployment and it's housing. So anytime we can provide services beyond the scope, so provide employment bridge, housing services, we are filling a hole that has unfortunately so many people have been falling through for many years. And so our program is truly, we're excited for the possibility. We're excited for the possibility of, again, of legislation like this passed and working with community members such as all of you. So thank you very much. And again, on behalf of Sheriff Juan Figueroa, this is the kind of work that we really appreciate. It's community driven, community led. It really is all about you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juanita Hotchkiss, from the Ulster County Sheriff's Department. Really appreciate you being here with us tonight. We're going to follow up with Luki Forbes, the Executive Director of We Are Revolutionary. Come on down.
Hello, everyone. My name is Luki Forbes, and I'm the Executive Director of We Are Revolutionary. We're an organization dedicated towards addressing ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So it's very important that we view the unemployment bridge program as exactly what it is. This is us taking a step in our history on being on the right side of history, on fixing the gaps within our system that was set in place by our forefathers. We are sitting in a time where we're proposing to help individuals who are formerly incarcerated once they're released from prison. As someone who was incarcerated at the age of 15 years old and wasn't released till I was 22 years old, I can tell you that being someone that served 7 years in prison, to come home and all you're given from our system is $40 and a ticket and a not real ID that really isn't acceptable in places is not enough. It puts so much struggle on our families, on individuals who are given a parole officer and told that you have to get a job within a certain period of time. Again, they only give you $40 when you're first released from prison. I can tell you from my own personal story that I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Albany and how it looks out there. But I used to have to walk all the way up Central Avenue until I got to Colony Center and then walk down Colony Center in order to apply for jobs because I didn't have enough money for public transportation. In Albany, the bus is $1.50. When you have limited access to resources and funds, it puts you in a predicament where you have to do all you can do just to make the bare minimum. When I was released from prison, both of my parents were deceased. All of my family lived in New York City. I had no support system set in place for me in the capital region at all. They denied multiple properties that I tried to give them to parole back around family. Unfortunately, our system really put me in a bind where I ended up getting really strung out on alcohol and found my way back in prison. It wasn't until that I really dedicate myself to actually making a change and ending up here. But we don't have to put people in these predicaments where they are struggling to make ends meet. We can utilize this program and make sure that individuals who are being released from prison have access to resources. And again, we're talking about people who were enslaved because the 13th Amendment does not stop slavery, it just moves it to being for those who are convicted of a crime. So you have people who are enslaved getting paid pennies on the dollar. My time is up, I just want to finish my sentiment. When you have people who are getting paid pennies on a dollar, let's say 7 years, after doing 7 years, I wasn't released with $4,000 because they are not paying you enough to make $4,000 in savings over that 7 years of time. We're putting people who have so much struggle, their family members are spending their money in order to take care of them while they're in prison, just to get out, again, being a bill on the table and not really being able to provide. We're putting people in hard predicaments that we can stop just by making sure that everyone is aware of this bill and is supporting this bill. Call your legislators, let them know that you support this bill as well as the money that goes behind it. Because this is really important to really make sure that New York is leading by example of what we want to see our history look like.
Thank you.
Follow, but I'm going to invite David Hill up here next. David is the first vice president of the National Writers Union.
So I'm a full-time freelancer, full-time writer, and I'm also the vice president of the National Writers Union. Our union represents thousands of freelance media workers around the country. It was formed in 1981 by Toni Morrison, Ursula Le Guin, and a number of other prominent writers who at the time were very concerned about declining standards for people that do creative work in the United States. Those writers, when they formed this union, could not have imagined the sea change that came 20 years later with the advent of the internet and all that it did to change the landscape of media in the United States. Today, not only are those standards lower, they are completely decimated. Those standards don't even exist at all. Members of our union, I like to say that we eat what we kill. We cobble together a living by doing dozens and dozens of jobs at piece rates for $25, $50, maybe $100 a throw throughout the year, without any guarantee that you're going to find work at any given month, or that if you do find work that you'll be paid for it, which is the subject of another bill that we just recently had passed the legislature with bipartisan support, but our governor vetoed, but that's a subject for another rally. But our work here, our effort in New York with the legislature is expanding, because this bill is as important to us. People who've entered the media industry during the internet age, I think, have come to accept this as sort of the way it is and take for granted this is just the way things are, and have accepted these standards and accepted this sort of situation. During the pandemic, when freelance media workers were given unemployment benefits for the first time, I think for a lot of our members and for a lot of people that do this work, they started to question why this wasn't the way things were, why this wasn't permanent, why we wouldn't be entitled to this sort of thing for the labor that we do. And I think that questioning has led people to understand that laws like this, that bills like this one that we're trying to pass, are essential to our future, to be able to have a future in this industry, to build a career and to be able to support our families and to work long term in the media industry. And I think that it's important also to us to understand that a lot of the companies that have created this situation sold us a bill of goods. They told us that it's to our benefit to be independent contractors, to do contract work, or to be freelance, because of the freedom that it affords us and the independence that it affords us, rather than the real reason that they did it, which was to offload all of their responsibility and obligation to our safety net and our security onto us, rather than paying that obligation to the government like any other business would. And a lot of these companies in media that have done this are tech companies like the ones that we think should help fund this bill in New York State. And these tech companies did it in the media industry, and they're doing it in a growing number of industries, that they are changing the way that the relationship between labor and employers. So it's happened to us, it's going to happen to others as well. And for that reason, I just want to say that, I was an organizer long before I was a writer and a union organizer. One of the things I learned was that when people tell you that they support you, this is my last point. When people tell you that they are okay with the status quo, but they support you because they feel bad for what you're going through, those are often the first people that will cut and run when the campaign gets hot or when the heat is on. the members of our union believe that our future and our well-being is tied up with all the other groups that are impacted by this bill. And because of that, we are in solidarity. Our fight is your fight, and we're in this all the way to the end because together we think we're stronger, and that's the only way that we'll win. So you can count on the National Writers Union support until this thing wins. Thank you very much.
David, now we do have a couple of folks that could not join us this evening, but submitted written testimonies. So I'm gonna invite Cindy up first to, are you here, Cindy? Where'd you go? Oh, you're right in front of me, to read Julie Colati's statement. And just remember to go a little on the slow track.
Do you wanna move this over so that we can plug it in?
It's okay. I think it's okay for now. People of varying heights.
Okay, hello, everybody. I'm Cindy Bishop, and I'm a member of Woodstock Immigrant Support. And I'm reading a piece that was written by Julie Colati. And Julie is a small business owner from Kingston, New York. She owns a fitness facility. And her wife is Amy Colati. She also owns a small business, Ingram Law Firm in Kingston. She wanted to express her strong support for the Unemployment Bridge Program and its significance for many in our community, including freelancers, self-employed individuals, cash economy workers, undocumented immigrants, and formerly incarcerated individuals. I'm just going to read it as she wrote it. Allow me to share a personal experience that highlights the critical need for a program like this. During the COVID-19 shutdown, both my wife and I, self-employed individuals, faced a precarious financial situation. While we were fortunate to receive unemployment benefits, the amount was barely sufficient, less than $200 per week before taxes. This meager amount was due to the nature of our businesses and various other factors. The lifeline that sustained us during those trying times was the additional $600 provided through federal aid. As a business owner, I was obligated to cover myself with workers' compensation, leaving me exposed to financial hardship in the event of unforeseen accidents or health issues. For instance, a car accident or my recent hip surgery could have left us with no income despite our businesses and being self-sustaining. While my business can continue to operate without my direct involvement, many others are not as fortunate. There are no safety nets or benefits for self-employed individuals when they are unable to work. The only option in such cases is expensive insurance, which would significantly increase our operational costs. The Unemployment Bridge Program is a beacon of hope for people like us who fall through the cracks of the traditional unemployment system. It ensures financial support during catastrophic events, offering stability and peace of mind to those who would otherwise be left vulnerable. I urge you to wholeheartedly support and advocate for the Unemployment Bridge Program, which is not just an essential safety net, but a beacon of hope for the countless self-employed, freelancers, cash economy workers, undocumented immigrants, and formerly incarcerated individuals in our great state. This program, if passed, will undoubtedly make a positive and lasting impact on the lives of many people who need it most. Thank you.
And thank you to Julie Colati for offering that testimony. Next, our own Laura Kaplan will be reading a statement from small business owner Clyde Flick. Another round of applause for Laura.
So I'm just going to read exactly what Clyde wrote. First, I'd like to express my gratitude for the organizers of this forum for spotlighting the issue. My primary relevant experience is in being a self-employed creative worker for over 3 decades, teaching dance, producing performances, and working with Pilates clients. Difficulties that come up regularly are the instability of client class-based income, i.e. how quickly a full part-time client roster becomes very part-time pay when clients and students have to cancel. Staying afloat as an artist, work which requires constant attention with income that only comes in at the end of a project, how to survive between projects, etc. When I was contracted for part-time positions by colleges or studios, and that employment ended, the problem was the way unemployment was calculated. Half days or even just a single client on a day had to be counted as a whole day of employment. This drastically reduced any unemployment benefit. It usually wasn't even worth the effort to seek unemployment benefits. Of course, not being able to qualify for unemployment while self-employed as an artist and creative business owner is the biggest challenge. The way our industry works, there are periods of time where money is not coming in from contracts, grants, or box office revenues, but work has to continue and bills must be paid. Cultural production is one of those invisible labor forces that everyone depends on, but apparently very few value. The romantic myth of the impoverished, struggling artist who somehow benefits from her impoverishment is simply not true. Being poor and stressed out does not make better art or better anything. I think the employment system is designed the way it is because it is understood that certain types of workers will keep doing their jobs, providing the experiences and making money for others, even if they're not supported the way regular employees are. Creatives, part-time temporary workers, people in the service sector, and undocumented people's weaknesses in work ethic are knowingly taken advantage of. Let's do better and create protections for all types of workers. There is no such thing as unnecessary or unskilled labor. Everyone's effort is important. Clyde Forth, Artistic Director, Locust Sparsa Dance Projects.
Next, we have Salvador Altamirano Segura, who is a team member with Family of Woodstock. Salvador, please come on up.
That's kind of threatening. How much time do I have? So I hear that thing.
It's a little
You're the
aggressive.
timer.
The timer is a little aggressive.
Yeah, how much time?
2 days.
2 minutes?
3 minutes.
Oh, wow, okay. So, well, that's tough. Okay. What I like to say is that I'm gonna give you my first job. When I came to the States, I'm originally from Mexico. I went to San Antonio, and I was over $150 to paint this whole house. I said to the guy, that's a little too little. And he said, well, you don't want to do it. I just find another Mexican who will do it. So that tells you how many of us migrants are viewed in the labor market by many. Those taking advantage of the situations. And, you know, I painted a house for $150. Why? Because I needed the money. I work in human services for the past 25 years, and I have worked with a lot of the migrant population. I have seen and heard many scenarios that are just heartbreaking. Many employers, you know, this society moves because of money, and it's all about money. And when you have workers that are not protected, some people, they might have some high values, but all of a sudden, they go to the wayside and take advantage of people to make more money. And well, how about you put another 8 hours on top of the 70 hours you already work? Or you don't have a job. Anyway, and many of them, you know, I really like the Workers' Justice Center. We have referred people to them, but there's been more people that do not want to go to them because they're scared that anything that is court, that they might end up being deported. They're afraid of making waves. Also, many of us come from societies that have been oppressed generationally, and our self-esteem might not be as great. So sometimes we just put up. We've been trained to put up. So not having a safety net just plays right into it. I have 30 seconds. So in those 30 seconds, I'm gonna tell you that we've been used as political ping pong balls. Every time that there's gonna be elections, we have politicians talking about to migrant populations, to migrant groups. Oh yeah, and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that. And nothing happens. And right now the environment might not be that conducive, but we really need to raise our voices because, you know, it's a right. It's just simply a right. I'm tired, honestly, of being used for political reasons. And right now, good individuals, good thinking individuals are freaking out because the asylum seekers are coming. Like they're taking, and this rhetoric plays into this. So please, if you believe in human rights, support this and do whatever you can to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your way as well. You've been just a critical support person for folks in the community, so thank you for all you do. Next, I'm going to introduce Alba Giron, who is a local resident here to share her story.
Hi everyone. I'm gonna read a little bit, okay? My name is Alba Giron. I have been Woodstock resident for many years. Many of you might recognize me because I've been working in many restaurants and food service jobs over the years. My husband and I are locally homeowners, taxpayer, and U.S. citizen. I am here to speak for the hardworking friends and family members. Among them, cooks and kitchen staff are local restaurants, housekeeper, gardens, who have a very difficult time during the pandemic, loss of work, little or no income, but their rent and heat and food costs still have to be paid. When the next crisis occurs, they might need help, willing to be able. I ask you support the employment bridge program, the legislation, or I ask you to support the bill. If we're working together, guys, we can make it a team and working together, and I think we get very good if we're working and putting together a little bit of time for everybody, so we can help the people who need help. Thank you very much.
Appreciate everyone for keeping their comments brief. We are moving quite along here quite well. Next, I'd like to introduce Evelio Martinez, who lives in Kingston and is involved with many organizations in the community. And among other things, Evelio is part of our few coalition worker advisory councils. So he has taken a real leadership role in this campaign. We've been in Albany together. We've done a lot of actions together. I remember Evelio speaking over Zoom while he had COVID at a rally. So he's just really gone above and beyond to fight for the rights of excluded workers. Evelio, bienvenido. Sí, en español está bien.
Ok. Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Belio Martínez y yo vengo de Guatemala. Pienso que hablaré lo mismo como los demás compañeros hablaron aquí enfrente. Y el día de hoy estamos aquí para...
Un momento para. I can just do it, I can do simultaneous. Yep. I'll do consecutive. Okay, we're good. I'm gonna scoot this back because I have to put this in so we don't lose you.
I'm ready.
One second. All right. Adelante, we're good.
Lo siento, mi nombre es Belio Martínez y vengo de Guatemala. Yo pienso que diré lo mismo como los demás compañeros aquí adelante, que estamos tratando de conseguir el seguro de empleo para las personas que son despiden sus trabajos y otras cosas cuando están saliendo de cárceles o no encuentran trabajo. Entonces, como la pandemia llegó, yo fui alguien que yo perdí mi trabajo a esa temporada, incluso estuve con COVID. Entonces salió el programa de los trabajadores excluidos, le dieron un beneficio. Entonces yo en ese tiempo yo estaba sin trabajo y cuando dijeron que salió un programa, yo fui también beneficiado en ese programa. Es un gran alivio sentido en ese tiempo. Y hay muchas personas como personas inmigrantes sin papeles, pierden sus trabajos por razones que no tienen documentos o simplemente quedan sin trabajo. Y es cuando ellos o nosotros no podemos acudir a solicitar el seguro de desempleo porque es poco, no hay mucho, no está muy avanzado el programa para todos nosotros. Pienso que necesitamos luchar más para lograr ese programa para todos. Como también necesitamos luchar para un seguro de desempleo y para un seguro médico para todas aquellas personas que no tienen acceso al seguro médico y todo eso. Como les digo, hay muchas personas que hay afuera sin trabajo por razones que no tengan documento. Pero ahora yo les hago la invitación a todas las personas que nos unamos y juntos podamos luchar para obtener más acceso a un programa de desempleo, a un seguro médico y juntos lo podemos lograr todos. Muchas gracias.
And I think we have one more written statement from Emily Sherry that Cindy is going to read, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A and anyone else who'd like to share.
Thank you. This one is a little long and I can't really shorten it because it's not my story. I have to read it all. So Emily Sherry is a local small business owner. She and her partner own Provisions. It's a small catering and restaurant business, but she also runs a soup kitchen called The Table at Woodstock and feeds a number of families in the Ontario School District, as well as collects school supplies and hygiene supplies for students really of all ages who are also students in the Ontario School District. So she's a very important member of our community. So she writes, in 2008, I had a brand new baby, 3 other children under the age of 12, a beautiful home in Saugerties, and 2 jobs. My husband worked in commercial moving in New York City with a company that dealt mostly with the banking industry. Among their clients were Chase and Bank of America and others. I was a social worker working in a New York State grant program and a realtor assisting my mom with the business she had in the mid-80s. We had a comfortable, busy life and a serious mortgage that we were easily able to afford. I had little time for the news, but as we moved into the fall, it was impossible not to see the writing on the wall. Slowly, our world crumbled. My husband, who had been working 80 hours a week, was laid off and suddenly home all week with no end in sight. The wealthy clients my mother and I had been building relationships with for months stopped returning our calls. Scheduled closings were called off. That's real estate closings, were called off, and the phones were deadly quiet. My husband began receiving unemployment checks, but they were less than a quarter of what he had been earning. Real estate, which had comprised of 3/4 of my income, was gone, and I owed the IRS $10,000 that I planned to pay with upcoming closings. As my husband and I tried to figure out how to reconfigure our lives, my mother was quietly losing everything. My mother, who had worked all of her life, most of it as a realtor, was not eligible for unemployment. She could not afford her health insurance or her mortgage, and her savings was quickly being depleted. As a single mother of 4, my mom wasn't one of the realtors who had been able to invest in rentals or fund an investment account. A survivor of an incredibly rare cancer that almost took her leg, health insurance was almost as important as food, and that she could no longer afford. Without unemployment and not yet eligible for Medicare, every day was an exercise in panic management. In late February of 2009, I was told that New York State was defunding the program I worked for. Programs like mine across New York were being slashed as everyone scrambled to adjust to the recession. My husband and I knew that we would, I knew that was gonna happen. My husband and I knew we would have the tiny unemployment checks to care for our family, and yet my mother still had nothing. As time passed and the economy continued to free fall, we lost our home. My mother put her home next door to ours on the market, knowing that it was losing value every day, but unable to pay the mortgage or the taxes. As a family, we made an incredibly difficult decision to leave the only home we had ever known in the Hudson Valley and start again in central New York, where life and housing was cheaper. My mother, who had been earning a very comfortable living, was now receiving Medicaid and food stamps, unable to find work. Our family of 6 was living off less than $800 a week, ineligible for food stamps, but having exhausted COBRA, grateful for Medicaid. We found a house with room for my mom and started over. It was heart and soul breaking. It was a heart and soul breaking move. The 3 of us had worked all our lives, and unemployment offered my husband and I enough to keep one of our cars, find a rental home for the 7 of us, and keep our family safe and warm. Had we not taken my mother with us, her future would have been bleak. Still recovering from cancer, not yet approved for Social Security disability. Unable to stand for more than 15 minutes at a time, my mother was not considered employable outside of the career that she had painstakingly built. My mother lost her career, her home, her Hudson Valley family and friends, and importantly, her pride and her sense of self. We lived in central New York until my husband's industry recovered and he was brought back to work. My mother was eventually granted Social Security disability and housing at Woodstock Commons. Having returned to Woodstock, where I was raised, I started my own small business Provisions. I watched the economy struggle to recover from COVID, and I struggle daily with my own cancer recovery. I live in fear every day that if I need it, I will not be eligible for unemployment. I've worked since the age of 14. I give to my community, and I've paid every tax levied on me. If recession wins again, and I can't earn a living with my tiny business, do I not deserve the same protection I would be afforded if I worked for New York State or even Burger King? Small business owners, people waiting for legalization, but working every day, realtors, independent truck drivers, we deserve the same protections we fund. Please help us feel secure in the work we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to open it up to see if there are any questions or comments, anything folks might like to share spontaneously. We're gonna open up the floor. Yeah, why don't, we don't have two mics, so could I bring you this microphone if you have something you want to say? And I think I'm gonna turn the Zoom camera out into the audience.
Well, thanks to everybody for speaking. Very enlightening, and this coalition is pretty amazing, inspiring. I have a question. Just when talking to people in the community, trying to educate folks about what this is going to do for people and how it will help. I feel like one of the contentions brought up is, well, certain people in certain jobs aren't contributing, and it'd be great to like offer all these benefits to everyone, but the money's just not there. So like, what is the counter argument to that? Like, how do you connect the dots to like actually talk about the fiscal contributions that people make?
Yeah.
Even if they're not, doing documented work.
Others are welcome to respond, because this is a great question, and I think, we talked a little bit at the beginning about the kinds of contributions that the different groups of workers who would be included under the unemployment bridge program, what kinds of contributions they make. Many undocumented people are on payroll and making contributions to UI that they will never be able to benefit from. Same with Social Security and many other payroll tax deductions, right? We talked about how many billions of dollars in productivity incarcerated workers contribute to the economy. We know that freelancers bear a heavy tax burden already, right? So there are so many different ways in which folks are contributing, but not getting their fair share of the Social Security, the unemployment security safety net. One of the critical pieces of this legislation is that it's tied to the digital ad tax, which is a really important mechanism to fund not just this program, but other basic social services, other basic services that people need. And it doesn't negatively impact in any way anyone. It's this is a corporate tax, right? We're targeting some of the largest big tech companies. These are the companies that have accumulated the greatest amount of wealth over the past several decades. Luke, you wanted to add something? I'm gonna hand you the mic.
Like a lot of the people don't see on the back end of the way that form of incarcerated people contribute to our everyday lives. Your license plate. If a New York State employee actually made your license plate, the way that we would be taxed would be completely different. If a New York State employee was the person who actually answered the phones when you call DMV versus the women who work at Bethlehem, your taxes would be completely different. The reason why our society kind of flows every day is because of people who are incarcerated. So if someone was to say to you, hey, why should someone formerly incarcerated receive this benefit? It's because they were being paid 10 cent, 8 cent an hour to weld the chairs that your children sit on. They were being paid 35 cents at maximum within those types of industries. So when we're talking about people who are incarcerated, they are still contributing to our everyday function of life. I know when I was in the juvenile facilities, just being a juvenile, we printed all the papers for the offices and the state departments. So even things like that, or even if you look at the $1 million staircase inside the Capitol building that was built by inmates from Sing Sing. So our system, the New York State system, the American system also relies on the backs of our inmates. In Arizona, they actually build the navigation systems for some of our United States missiles. So when you're looking at how they contribute to our everyday society, I hope that just gives like a little peek of how people who are incarcerated are kind of forced into contributing to everyday society. Even though they may not pay tax, they help lower your tax.
Yeah, just a brief comment. Something that's being tried out in different regions of New York State and different parts of the country is universal basic income. It's been tried in other countries and it's just a standard way that they do business. I think it's far past time for this country to kind of re-examine how they look at citizens of the country, to look at them as human beings and provide for their basic welfare. We spend so many billions of dollars building bombs that will go over to different countries, blow up the people, blow up the structures within those countries. I think it's far past time that we look at something like universal basic income. I know there's a lot of people who would maybe express opinions against that, and it may take time. But it's something I think we certainly should be looking towards and considering strongly. And to put that bug in representatives' ears is very important. To keep contact with representatives does slowly, but with progress, does progress along, and over time does change things. Excellent.
We have some handouts, and for folks on the Zoom, you can, if you email us, we can share some of these documents digitally, but one of the handouts we have is information with the bill number and how to contact your legislators here in Ulster County who represent us in the state legislature. Of course, we heard from our assembly member, Sarah Hanna-Shrestha, who is already supporting the bill. Let's thank her. We have some work to do with Michelle Hitchie, who is not yet committed to sponsor the bill. So I think Laura has a few things she wants to say.
I just wanted to see if somebody's checking this is a manual, or you're checking the chat. Yeah, there's no questions. No questions in the chat, that's all I wanted to. No questions in the chat.
Okay, no questions in the chat. Please, those of you on Zoom, feel free to chime in the chat and you can share your comments. Anything else that folks want to say, add? We have some organizations we need to thank for their support and co-sponsorship, of course, Woodstock Immigrant Support. These are the folks that brought us here tonight, and we got a comment.
On the housing committee here in Woodstock, I've been doing it for 4 years, and we've have multiple initiatives that we've been working on kind of like all at the same time to move forward. It was all based the first couple of years on research, and the research showed that it's a very complex problem, but we just have things to do with it, and a lot of the people we're trying to find housing for are Alice report. people who are working, people who might be unemployed, but in this town, you need to make at least $70,000 a year to afford a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment. Having grown up here, that's just outrageous. And it's kind of happening everywhere. So the research showed this very complex problem needs very complex, multi-pronged solutions. And one of the things that I've been noticing is between school districts and maybe some of these bills and different things, everyone's sort of in silos. And I feel like we could be working together on some of these same issues, which is really just what, Terry was saying about if our country could get to a place where we value the basic needs, Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs, water, food, shelter, safety, and then start working towards education, we'd be a lot better as a whole, uplifting everybody, and can work on other things like that we need to be working on as well. But anyway, we could really use some support in the housing and some of the initiatives that we're trying to move forward that need to work together. But there's a lot of NIMBYism out there and resistance and fear. So that's all I got to say.
We acknowledge the folks that came together to make this happen. Again, Woodstock, and this was all the brainchild of Laura Kaplan and the folks at Woodstock Immigrant Support. We also have co-sponsorship from Ulster Immigrant Defense Network. We've got some folks here from UIDN, Woodstock Human Rights Commission, the Woodstock Library, yes, excellent, for the many, the National Writers Union, and of course Columbia County Sanctuary Movement. Give it up for the Williams. We also I want to shout out to our online team. We have our Zoom interpreters, Cesar and Henry. Thank you so much. We've got Judith managing the Zoom. So many folks here that pitched in to make this a really successful night. So thank you all. Laura, is there more you want to say? Make a couple announcements about the flyers we got in the back.
Yeah, I could just say that again. We've been saying it a number of times. Have flyers on the back table. There's one that's got our legislators, the bill numbers and the legislators' phone numbers, as well as the switchboard at the Capitol if you live in a different area than Woodstock. So please take those with you, and I'm so glad you read the co-sponsors, because I thought I was going to do that to start out with, and then it went past my brain. And everybody in Woodstock Immigrant Support has worked so hard on this. And Emma, always thank you to you and Iridian.
Amazing speakers. Thank you all so much. I just want to say there are some flyers for a program that my colleague Cecilia runs called Rise Up Women in Motion. It's a women's empowerment series. And so if you know immigrant women in the community who might be interested in participating, grab a flyer, reach out to Cecilia. And we got one more comment.
Just one last comment. Sometimes people, for one reason or another, may or may not contact their representatives in Albany or Washington. But a great place to bring up the discussion is just if you're hanging around town, having coffee with a group of 2, 3, 4, 5 people. A lot of people haven't even heard of the program, but once you bring it up, tell them a little bit about what the program is about. Do they perk up? They certainly do. They want to know more about it, and then when they hear that the term again, unemployment bridge program, they know what's being talked about, and then it's like the ripple effect in a pond. They'll mention it to someone else, and then it goes on and on. So just informally as well as formally, great idea to bring up in spring. Yes.
Invite your friends over for tea, and ply them with flyers. That's a great idea. I hope every single one of you here tonight will commit to speaking with at least 2 of your friends and family members about this. That's a great assignment to end with. Thank you again for everything. Thank you to everyone online for attending. Have a great night.